Welcome back to the Chosen Journey with Big Money Grip, Steve Karsay. It's feeling so odd, Steve, not meeting you, talking in person. We're not at Butterfield with our great breakfast spread. We're back online, back from Scottsdale, back in balmy Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It's great to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Jonathan. I'm hoping that your trip went extremely well over the last 2 weeks that you got to spend with your son, touring the United States a little bit.
We made it quite across the US and back. Only one dead battery, so not too bad, after one of the WBC games, come back to the car, had a feeling it was the battery started sounding a little iffy. Well, the battery didn't want to start. Somebody was nice enough to jump us, and other than that, no car troubles. And it was amazing to get through the US. I got to tell people it was the first time that Steve and I had seen each other in person. We've always connected online through the phone, text messages. And Steve, you are the best host. I don't know what's in the water in Scottsdale, but man, you go all out as a host and as a friend. We had a great time, my son and I. And thank you so much for helping us with our experience. And it was great to see you in Kingston.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Nothing more than just being a good friend and trying to help out. That's all. Anybody coming into an area that's new, you just need a few different pointers, where to eat, where to go. Obviously, you were coming in for a little bit of WBC and baseball and basketball and seeing some sports and enjoying the weather. So it was my pleasure, and it was a lot of fun.
It really was. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And man, there's a lot of great eats in Scottsdale. I got to say, I was very, very spoiled over there coming back to Canada. The food is just not the same. I don't know if it's because it's 77 Fahrenheit versus 40 Fahrenheit, but there's something special in the air there. And I got to say, it was magical. And we will be getting to the World Baseball Classic. We did not forget about it. We have opening days already underway. The MLB season is full underway, but we will get into later chapters on the World Baseball Classic because we got a lot to cover over there. But for today's chapter, we're at Magical Chapter 52. I called it Steve Karsay Keys to the 2023 MLB season. So we got the
All right,
2023,
let's see.
2023, 2023 MLB season is well underway. Steve, I gotta tell you, if you're gonna analyze the 2023 season and you're gonna see how the season started and progressed, there's two lists you gotta look at. You gotta look at the box scores and the injury reports. I don't know what it is. It seems like every year this happens, but the list of injuries for these teams, buddy, we're just in April and it is piling up, especially in New York. You look at the Mets, you got Verlander, Quintana, Diaz. The Yanks have Montez, Rodon, Bader, Severino. And then some of the key names I just happened to take a look at throughout the teams. You got Melancon, Iglesias, Hendricks, Votto, Altuve, Harper, Hoskins, Wainwright, Odorizzi, Ryu, Strasburg. So some key names. Names we knew were going to be there based on long-term injuries. Some happened at WBC. Some happened in spring training. Steve, is this any particularly a funny year when it comes to injuries, or is this normal run of the mill?
This is normal run of the mill. It's just one of those things that happen. Teams get hit by the injury bug. Every team is going to have some type of issues during the season, whether it's early, middle, or late. It's going to depend how they manage those situations. Where their club is, whether it's coming out of spring training or is it mid-season, or is it the stretch run? Like obviously, you want all your key players healthy during the stretch run and when you're in it and trying to vie for a playoff spot. But this is typical. This is kind of just what baseball is. I mean, it's a tough sport. It's a grind. It's day in and day out. You have to have good preparation. You got to have good work ethic. You got to maintain during the season instead of build during the season as far as lifting goes. Guys get in there and just maintain their bodies, get what they need, get their treatment, and then prepare for the game. 162 over the course of 6 months is very taxing on one's body, especially in baseball, and especially if you're a pitcher, because it's not normal just to throw like that. And then the way these guys have built up coming out of spring training, just the way and how hard guys throw in today's game. It's a constant. It's not, you know, one guy throwing 95 to 100. It's multiple guys that train like that and throw that hard. And when you have put lots of stress on your arm like that, things are bound to happen, and you're bound to come up sore a little bit. I saw a stat on DeGrom the other day, watching him start for Texas against the Phillies, and every ball he threw was incredible. It was 98 to 100 to 101 miles an hour. So, with that stress, it becomes you know kind of just one of those things that at some point guys are going to wear down, especially in different temperatures, whether you're in the heat or you're not, and teams just have to deal with it.
Phillies, by the way, as you happen to mention, were my 2023 World Series pick going into the year. Don't know how good I'm feeling about this pick right now, to be honest. When you see Hoskins is out for the year, Nola has a meltdown over the pitch clock. Don't quite know how I'm feeling about this right now.
We're
And
2 days in.
I know, but it's
Days
still,
in.
I don't see Bryce Harper. He's not going to be in for a little while. It's just one of those funny things. It's like, I kind of, I feel the allure of the postseason, right? And I'm still in that World Series from last year. I tell myself there's been player turnover. 162 games, plus spring training and World Baseball Classic, plus the playoffs themselves. The lineup that I'm going to see today is probably not the lineup I'm going to see in July, and it's not going to be the same lineup I'm going to see in September. So many factors can change. You have all these teams all playing 162 games. Like, it's a marvel the amount of games that they're playing. If you think about on their bodies, especially if you're an everyday player. And the difference, it's funny. The playoffs is going to be a difference of 89 wins to 91 wins, 93 wins, over 162 games. One or two wins can boil down to whether you're making the playoffs or not. That's scary.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will give you a tip on when you decide to start choosing your teams to make the playoffs, win the World Series, things like that. My advice to you is watch the first 25% of the season before deciding and making any choices far beyond getting into October. So 40 games in, I think you will have a better feel of who these teams are, what they bring to the table, and what they're capable of sustaining over a course of 162 games.
So I gotta ask you then this quandary, because I got another buddy that we've known each other since grade one, and we've been baseball fans forever, right? We're going to the games. Me and him had this debate because I was the guy who in April would say he's in the best shape of his life. He's gonna have the best season ever. Look at him. I was all ready to go. He was the guy who said, "Don't talk to me until after the All-Star game, big second half." Which one of us is right?
I would say neither, only because advice was a quarter of the season, 40 games. When you get into the All-Star game, you're close to 90 games, 92 games. You should know exactly who you are, and as far as a team, by the time you get to 90 games. Teams kind of starting to just figuring out like what their lineup is, who they are, what they do really well throughout the first 40 games of the season. So when you get to mid-May, we'll rehash this conversation, and I think you will have a better idea of, all right, the NL East looks like this, the NL West looks like this. Here are our contenders. Here are the guys. Here are the teams who are going to be sneaky. Maybe like a Baltimore or a Texas. In the AL East, AL West. So you'll have a better idea, because I think Baltimore may surprise some people how they start out and how hot they are, and then you can kind of just figure out and see how they're gelling and kind of winding into the what I call the second semester of baseball.
So I guess after opening day, we cannot predict yet that four teams in the AL East are going to win 100 plus games. So I will temper my expectations. We'll bring this back into mid-May. The other one I thought that would make you laugh is this. You know those experts that are looking in January, February saying, how is this team going to slot their starting rotation? They got too many pitchers. They got 7 or 8 great pitchers. This is not going to work out. They got to trade pitching. I remember somebody once had that famous expression, you can never have too much pitching. Go ask the Yankees and Mets that right now as they're looking at their seventh and eighth starters into the rotation, and they would agree. Does this go across the board for all teams? You can't never have too much pitching. Let's hoard as much starting pitch as we can for the season.
I would agree with that, very much so. I think the more depth you can create in your pitching staff, the better off you're going to be over the long haul of 162. You can manage their innings. You have to remember, when you sign guys, or you got to figure out who they are. Has this guy thrown X amount of innings over the course of the last 3 years? Like, what was his most innings he's thrown, and then create the percentage that you want him to throw the following year. If a guy only throws 100 innings, you can't expect him to throw 200 innings the following year. It's 100% increase of from where he's at. So, so the depth becomes, okay, we can manage this guy. We can give this guy 20 starts. We can give this guy 25 starts. Maybe we, lock him into 10 or 12 starts and give him anywhere from 50 to 70 innings and use him out of the bullpen a little bit. But that's the just strategic part of front offices, of teams when they sign players, knowing what their depth is, who they're going to be able to have in AAA as starting pitchers and call them up when need be, or filter in a couple extra arms in their bullpen. So when a guy starts getting used a little bit too much in the bullpen, or he goes on the IL, that they have a fresher arm coming up from AAA. So again, no player likes to sign and go to AAA. They all want to make the big leagues out of spring training. But where teams, I think, go right is they find the guys who are what we usually call 4A players, guys who bounce back between AAA and the big leagues, have a little bit of success in the big leagues, and just haven't found out what it is to maintain a constant in the big leagues. So they kind of just, bumped up and down from AAA to the big leagues, and they're very good. They just haven't found the one thing that has made them click yet, and hopefully that comes. And it just comes at different times for different players. So you have that depth. You have what they call the shuttle for relievers up and down from the big leagues to the minor leagues, and then you have that one or two extra starters that you can plug in if you have an injury, just to sustain and kind of just hold serve, so to speak, till the other guy gets back. So yes, I would agree with you. I think the more depth you can create, the better off you are over 162 game season.
And why is that the level of quadruple A players out there? I mean, they get drafted very often. They could be in the high rounds. They've done very well in the lower minors. They obliterate triple A. They come into the majors, doesn't click for them, go back to triple A, obliterate triple A again. What is it about that separation between triple A to the majors from a hitter's perspective, from a pitcher's perspective, that some people just cannot make that breakthrough?
I'll go from the pitcher's perspective first. It could be anything. It could be a little bit of a command issue. It could be he can't get his secondary over for strikes consistently. Some days he has his breaking ball, he can throw for strikes. Some days he can't. Now he gets boxed in if he's a two-pitch pitcher, that all I can do is throw my fastball. And if I don't have pinpoint control, big league hitters get paid very well, and they're very good. So there's a difference between a big league hitter that's a veteran or has been in the big leagues for a while, and a AAA hitter who hasn't experienced that level of competition. So that guy might just have more experience and just be, better at the AAA level because of more experience, and knows how to get younger guys out who are coming up from AA or haven't been AAA players for a very long time, as opposed to big league, where every hitter in the lineup, there's no soft spots in the lineup. I always used to talk to pitchers in AAA and say, listen, there's probably about 2-3 guys in this lineup that are going to do damage and hurt you. If you can navigate your way through the lineup and not let these 2 or 3 guys do damage, you're going to have a good game, because the other guys I felt like we could handle. Not that they're not good players or going to be good players, but right at that time, They just weren't the caliber of the other couple, two or three guys in the AAA lineup who had experience, who just knew how to hit a little bit better. And that comes with age, it comes with experience, it comes with at bats. So I think that's the difference with the pitching is the consistency, the strike throwing, maybe the mental part of it and the temperament and the thinking part of it. It could be possibly some of it too. So there's many different avenues of that. And I would say a hitter is very similar, just on the other side. Is you don't have the at bats in the big leagues. You're not facing, Wheelers, Jacob DeGrom, Scherzers, Alex Manoah. You're not facing these guys in AAA unless they're on a rehab. So the consistency of the quality of pitching in the big leagues is much different than the quality of pitching in AAA. So that's where front offices and teams, when they give young guys a chance, they got to give them a little bit of leeway because they got to get comfortable in seeing and facing these guys. And those guys, young guys, I'm talking about, who adjust quicker and can make better adjustments and have better aptitude to learn, are the guys who stay there and stick a little bit longer and then become, consistent hitters against the really good pitchers and then get their shot to stay in the big leagues for a while.
Dave, I gotta tell you, my friend, when we were watching World Baseball Classic at your house on the TV, the thought I had was, there's no need to have volume on this TV. You might as well just mute it, have Steve talk, because man, you have forgotten more about baseball than most people will ever know. It's incredible. And it's almost when we do these episodes, these chapters, I think to myself, this is such a travesty. This man is not on ESPN or on the MLB network and sharing your insights, because you have a way of vocalizing it. You bring it to the masses. You're able to explain that anybody, even if you're just a casual baseball fan, can understand where it comes from and really appreciate your insights. It's a rare gift, and you got that, my friend. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a work in progress, so to speak. I've been in the game for a very long time. I've been playing it all my life, obviously from a kid, but professionally from the age of 18 when I got drafted. And I played with many great players. I've had discussions with many great players and many great coaches. For 30 years, all I did was talk baseball. So, as I say, a work in progress is it's a continuing learning curve and learning process. I learned something new still when I'm going to the field and talking to guys and talking to front office people and have friends in the business still and talk to them on the phone and ask them questions about what they're doing analytically and how they're you know making the changes as the new rules are coming into play. So I can kind of understand it. And so I can kind of just, uh, you know, take it in and absorb it and then form my own conclusions and form my own opinions on certain things. Where, like I said, with the new rules, the pitch clock, the bigger bases, and how things are going to work. So the game is an evolution. And the more you can think about it and the more you can learn. And that's what I try to pass on to these young players. There's more to baseball than just hitting, throwing, and catching. There's the baseball IQ part of it where you got to learn how to base run. You got to learn how to read balls off the bat. You got to learn situational baseball, where to throw the ball, depending the score, and all of those things. And as a 12-year-old, it's very hard. I mean, their brains are not matured yet, and some 12-year-olds get it a little bit faster than others, and that's just part of the maturation process that players go through, whether you're 12 or 13 years old, or whether what we just talked about, a guy from going from AAA to the big leagues, learning how to adjust and learning how to formulate a plan, whether you're on the mound or in the box against who you're facing.
Well, let's see. I made a list of the other keys I thought you might agree with. So let's see how close I came, and then let me know if I missed any as far as your keys to this MLB season. That game clock, the pace of the game. I gotta say, when I first heard about the pitch clock, I was a little upset, to say the least. I'm a purist at heart. I don't like any tweaks to the game. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You played it all the time like this. Why would you do this? This is going to cause huge disruptions. Mr. Nola over in Philadelphia would agree with me. But otherwise, I got to say, watching spring training, watching the beginning of the season, I'm going to eat my words on this one. It's really nice to have 2.5 hour games. You know what? And some possibly 2 hour games. And so when I wasn't consciously thinking about it and I just followed the game, it actually flowed really well. Guys seem to have picked it up really nicely. The flow was nice, didn't seem to disrupt anybody. It was just a great pace to the games. Agree, disagree? How do you feel right now about that clock?
Yeah, it's going to be adjustment for the players, right? I think when we think about the pitch clock, we focus too much on the pitch clock. I think they're going to adjust to it, and it's part of the rules and it's part of what they've done. I like the 2.5 hour games as well. But again, I want to go back to what we think about the pitch clock. We're so focused on the pitch clock, but the pitch clock is really one to cut down the time of the game, but to create more action and not have the lapses between pitches for the people who are watching the game. Like I think that's the end goal is we want more balls in play, we want more action, we want more stolen bases, and the pitch clock is just a substitute of getting these guys to move a little bit faster. And is it going to cause some distractions along the way until these guys get used to it? Yes, guys aren't used to, but there has to be a little bit of leeway. I'm just one who I just hope that a game doesn't end on a violation. I think that would be a travesty. Like for me, I get it throughout the game that you might have a strike here or a ball here, but in the ninth inning when you have the bases loaded, I don't want a ball four or a strike three to determine the outcome of the game. I want the two people who are on the mound and in the box and on the field essentially uh, to have the outcome of whatever that's going to be and not the umpire decision because a guy was 2 seconds late for getting in the box and didn't look at the pitcher.
No, fair, fair. All good points. So we'll see how it goes. But so far, the responses from the baseball community has been overwhelmingly positive with this clock. So hopefully, it does continue this pace of games, and like you said, it does not affect outcomes of games, especially come in the postseason. But we shall see. Looking across the board for opening day for the teams, I thought I was going to see some sort of trend as far as high scoring games, low scoring games. We had a bit of everything there. We had some shutouts. We had some high scoring games. I glued myself to the Cards Jays opener. Not the best game out of spring training with the pitchers getting shellacked as they did, but Romano closed it out for them. Really nice. Arnado, Goldschmidt looked like they were in midseason form. So it got me thinking to ask you, opening day starts, April's begun. In April, especially, I've heard both trains of thoughts. Who has the advantage, the hitters or the pitchers, in your mind?
I think personally, I think it's where you're playing in the country. And people who are playing indoors, I think the hitters have the advantage. People who are playing outdoors in colder weather, I think the pitchers have the advantage. You know, coming out of spring training, most hitters are warm. Florida, Arizona, they don't have to hit in the cold weather. If there's an adjustment to hit in 35, 40, 45-degree weather when the wind's blowing, you have more shadows. There's a lot of factors that play into that. So I don't think it's one way or another. I do think it's where you're playing, like in Texas, where they're indoors and it's climate controlled. Even if the weather is nice there, cold, hot, whatever, you're playing in whatever 69, 70-degree weather because the roof is closed, if that's how they have it. So again, when I was with Cleveland, I loved breaking spring training and pitching in April. The cold weather didn't bother me. I grew up in New York. I played in the cold weather all the time, in March and April. So when I got to Cleveland and the wind was blowing and it was cold, I knew the hitters didn't want to hit. So, you can throw balls in on them, you can try to jam them, and then they're really frustrated, and you can throw some off speed or breaking balls, and they just don't swing the bat as intently as they do when it's warm out. So again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to who has an advantage. I just really think it's where you're playing and what part of the country and what type of weather that you're playing.
When you had a choice at the time, if all else being equal, outdoor play as a pitcher when you were in the big leagues, if you had a choice in Cleveland in April, Texas in August, which would you have taken?
Cleveland in April,
And
Texas in August. If it was outdoors,
outdoors, outdoors.
if it's outdoors, no doubt. I would take. I just felt like I stayed fresher when the weather was cooler as getting beat down. And plus, and this is me, and this is a personal thing. Like if you're playing in 95, 97-degree weather and you got humidity, now you're dealing with the sweat dripping on your hands. You're trying to keep your hands dry because, you have the ball in your hands and if it's sweating all over it, it gets slick and the ball can pop out and you can't grip the curveball the same. So that was kind of, you know, things that for me were with hot and cold weather were a big difference.
Couple other points I want to raise as far as the keys to the MLB season. One, I did not think I would have to talk to you about, but I heard a radio interview very recently with Rob Manfred. And if you were listening in on this one, I don't know how you would react to it. I'm pretty sure it would not be in the positive. I did not think in the positive. He was saying throughout this season, I'm really going to have to look at the automated strike zone. I think it's something we heavily need to consider here, aka robotic umps. Uh, Steve, is there any way they're going to allow this to happen in season? Do you see this happening anytime in the near future? Period.
I don't see it happening in season. I think they may test it out, and they have been testing it out in the minor leagues and the fall league and all of that. I just, I personally have a hard time seeing it become relatively quick into the major league game. There's a human element. I've always talked about this to the game. The umpires do a tremendous job. It's not easy to be behind the plate and the ball's moving that fast and to call balls and strikes. You're going to make some mistakes, but relatively, if you look at the umpires, there's a website you can look at the umpires' scores and how many they got right, how many they got wrong, and which way they kind of lean. And every umpire is a little bit different as opposed to a computer that has just a strike zone that the ball has to go through. So I don't think it's coming this year. I'm sure they'll look into it. I don't know. I don't like it at all, to be quite honest with you. I would rather have a team have one or two challenges on a strike or ball call that they could actually go to. Unfortunately, I don't know how that's going to play out, but it would really disappoint me if it went to robot umps. I would have a hard time watching a full baseball game if I have a computer like TrackMan calling balls and strikes.
I feel the exact same way. And I wouldn't have brought it up except for the fact that he was so intensive about it and the passion about we are still looking into this. This is very, very important. I hope they steer him in a different direction. My last point I wanted to raise for this chapter, because we're hinting at it, and it is coming in the future chapters, is the World Baseball Classic. Now I gotta ask you, the guys who were at spring training throughout, played the spring training games, never left camp, versus the guys that grabbed their gloves, grabbed their bats, went off to World Baseball Classic for whatever amount of time, came back to spring training. Now they're all back together as a team before they head off to the regular season. Those guys that went to the WBC, ultimately, except for the injured ones, obviously, was it an advantage or disadvantage to prepare for the season in your mind?
Advantage. I think when you play in high stakes games like that and you're facing pitcher and you're a little bit more focused, not that they're not supposed to get their work in, but there's a difference in playing a game that means something as opposed to a spring training game when you know you're going to go to the field. I'm going to play 5 innings today. I'm going to get two at bats. This is what I'm going to work on, especially early in spring, as opposed to, all right, I'm going to the field today. We got a game against Mexico, and I got to perform at my highest level and be ready to play. I think that level of focus and that level of play over the course of 3 or 4 weeks gets guys more prepared to start the season. And I think they're just in a better spot as far as timing goes, especially with hitting.
I would agree with that. I can't see how it's not an advantage in that sense. And they must be real pumped to come back. I mean, I'm sure there's a bit of a down, like you need time to process of what, especially if you made it really through the WBC, that you come back to spring training now. It's that WBC high for a little bit. It's almost like you were in the World Series and now you're right back to spring training without a break. So I'm sure there's a bit of an adjustment that way. But
I will say,
yeah,
I will say that I think it might be a little bit of a disadvantage for pitchers because depending how ready a guy is to kind of ramp it up that quick, I will have to see and kind of track it and see how these pitchers kind of get out of the gates in spring training, the guys who were in the World Baseball Classic who pitched, and then see how they are as they get into the first month or two of the season, if they get injured or if they're wearing down or something because they ramped up too quick for the Baseball Classic. I think hitters are a little bit easier because they can prepare uh, much better, because as a hitter, you can go into the cage and you can swing and take 100, 150, 200 swings. As a pitcher, you can only throw so much. So you can only prepare each day to get ready for that. And then, that kind of just bleeds into the regular season. And I don't know how it affected Michaelis. I don't think he had the greatest of games against the Blue Jays there. As I was flipping back and forth, and he pitched in that as well. So I'm just not sure, like, how or where he is as far as like pitch count or things like that. So I think he'll be one to watch as it, and Wainwright obviously pitched in the Classic, and he kind of tweaked something early. Now the team doesn't have him for a good 3 or 4 weeks, and that's a big deal for a team that is shooting for the division in the NL Central.
For those pitchers that knew they were on the roster ahead of time, do you think some of them started their programs earlier than normal, or did they probably stay on as they normally would course?
I think they started their programs a little bit earlier than what they would. But as we've always talked about, there's a difference in throwing a bullpen session, throwing a live BP against hitters, and then actually getting in a game and competing at max effort, when it counts. And that's what spring training is for starting pitchers is, okay, I'm going to build myself up. Yeah, it's going to count, but I'm only throwing 2 innings. And then the next time I'm throwing 3 innings. And everything is highly monitored. It's the pitching coach is looking at exactly how many pitches he's thrown each outing, how many he's thrown each inning, and how many outs he wants him to get through the end of spring training. And that sets, the base and the foundation for a starting pitcher when he gets into game one of the regular season or makes his first start. So I just think there's a balance there, but there's a difference between hitters and pitching being ready for the season, doing that high level of competition uh, during a spring training or what should be a spring training scenario.
Did I accurately predict most of Steve Karsay's keys for the 2023 season off the gate, or are there any that are sticking in your mind that we still need to cover?
No, I mean, I think the injury report, obviously, I think, where guys are at coming out of the the WBC, World Baseball Classic, and then obviously the rules and everything like that. And, but I think the number one thing is, as you said, the injuries. That's going to be a key to watch, especially early in the season, and see how teams get off to, whether it's a good start or a bad start with, a number of their players on the IL early in the season.
Tune anytime into New York sports radio and guarantee you whether it's the Mets or Yankees, that's the talk right now for sure. Steve Karsay, Big Money Grip, thank you very much for your insights as always. And we'll stay tuned for the next couple of weeks because we're going to bring back the World Baseball Classic. It's time to dissect it and see how it went.